Sorry, the thing on Stankoven is that he is still generating scoring chances. He went from being cold to being snake bitten, but it's not as though he's not a factor. And we've talked about this on the show, whether it's our daily podcast or on our game broadcast.
Yeah,
he is still an effective player. And the fact that he has, 18 points versus Michkov's 29 is a factor for Calder Trophy racing, but he's only a -1. He is a much better 200-foot player, I think, right now than Michkov is.
I mean, here's the reality. He's not a Calder candidate, and I'm going through it right now. Like, I was just looking it up, and I may or may not have a vote this year. I don't know if I do or not. But the fact of the matter is, I have a hard time putting him in the top 10, right? Like, it's Hutson, Michkov, Celebrini, Tipslikov, and for the Islanders is having a better year. Like
Siplikov.
Yeah, thank you. Gauthier. I mean, Gauthier has more points, has just as many points on a worse team, and is that a zero? Now, I know plus minus isn't everything, but Gauthier's having a better year by those standards. You look at we've been talking about how much Will Smith has been struggling this year, and he has just as many points as Stankoven in less games. And then you have Dustin Wolf, who's having a tremendous year in Calgary and goal. Like, for me, it's not even like to call Stankoven a Calder candidate. It was preseason hype. But
no, it was early season. He tore onto the opening 10 games or so. Yeah, he was great,
and that was built off preseason hype too. Like,
sure,
it was preseason hype. Everyone said, So,
hey, Sean, can you take me through the voting? So let's say you have a vote. So how do you go about it? I mean, you just strictly look at the points and that's it, or what?
I don't strictly look at the points. And so for me, the Rookie of the Year, the definition is the most. I think it's most proficient is what the terminology is. The most proficient player in their first year or qualifies as a rookie. Since obviously you have to. There's a couple different ways to qualify as a rookie. How I vote on things is I do it two ways. I mean, there's two ways I look at it. The first thing I do is I go through and I make my list when I'm filling my ballot out. And last time I had a ballot was 2 years ago. I didn't have one last year. When I go through and fill out the ballot, the first thing I do is I make my initial list. And I just do what do I think right now, my initial list. And then I make that. And then I go and research my own list. And then I go through and I look at some of the data. I look at the players. I remember what I saw firsthand. And then the other thing I do, and it's not something everyone does because it is my ballot, but the other thing I do is I have hockey scouts and coaches in the hockey world I trust that I reach out to, and I pick their brains on things too. Like that. Now that is how. There's no rule that says you have to how you go fill out your ballot, but I am a believer in. I see there's certain teams I see more of than others, and so that's kind of how I go through and do it. The points definitely become a entryway. I'm also a believer, Luds, just the other big thing for me, and this is a way how I view things, and I realize this is a little bit of a positional sway, but I believe it's much harder to be a rookie defenseman and have an impact than as a rookie forward. I am admittedly when I go and
I won't argue there.
Yeah, and I think that's something where I argued heavily against that when I thought Miro Heiskanen in his rookie year got jobbed quite a bit. But I don't know. I'm not saying Miro should have won the Calder his rookie year, but I thought Miro was way lower on a lot of ballots than he should have been because I'm a big believer in what he was doing as a rookie defenseman was very undervalued by many voters. So yeah, that's how I go through and look at it. There are a lot of voters who I know, for example, they won't say it. Everyone has a good answer or they won't say it, but there's a lot of people who will just go to the stats site and be like, oh, well, here's the points, and then they'll do it.
No, I know you wouldn't. And you guys are both, I'm sure, familiar with Safe Sport USA.
Yeah, we have to do the courses to coach for our rec teams.
Yep. Yeah, well, let me tell you, I get worn out on it, right? And so some of the things, they just change it a little bit, and then you have to watch the video.
Every time.
You have to watch it, and you have to answer the questions. You don't get so many questions right, you have to do the whole thing over again. I wish there was something like that forced people to watch these guys play. Yeah. Whether it's 5 games, 10 games, I don't even know what the number is, but and they can't move on until they actually watch these guys play in games because, if you're on the East Coast and you got, 3 guys, and vice versa, and all of a sudden you're staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, it's hard to do that. So my opinion is they probably just go through all the stats and because then I would think Logan would be in the conversation regardless. When you see how Stankoven plays and how he goes about his job, it isn't at just one end of the ring.
No, 100%. Yeah.
Let me throw this at both of you. William W. Williams in the chat just now said, so what if Logan gets hot with points later? Does it put him back in the Calder conversation?
Can.
If he has 10 points in his next 15 games and gets within 1 or 2 of Celebrini, Michkov, and Hudson, is he back in that conversation?
I think, of course, but what happens if those other guys stay on the same pace there?
Yeah.
Fair.
Which isn't right. I don't think it's right.
No, and
I think you got to look at the whole body of work that the players do. And I think some of the guys that we're talking about, for me, they play in 1/3 of the rink. That's where they do their work, is in 1/3 of the rink. Logan does it in all 3 zones.
And the other thing about whole body of work people have to remember, too, and this goes back to the year that Kaprizov won the Calder against Jason Robertson. There was a big thing of like, oh, well, look how strong Jason Robertson finished the season versus how Kaprizov did. Using that terminology, whole body of work again. I am a big believer in success and being the best, most proficient rookie. If you can play at that level from game 1 through 82, that means a lot to me. Like you obviously take into account if a guy improves and everything like that. But for me, proficiency and being the top rookie and everything like that, it's not just, who finished strong. It's also, it also comes into play of who's been able to show that they were ready and attacked things right away from the beginning. I give credit to that because that's why, like, when it came to Robertson versus Kaprizov, I voted for Kaprizov because Kaprizov, you know what? He was the most proficient rookie. Robertson did have a better push, and he kind of took more of that conversation at the end. But you can't just say, well, game 1 through 20 don't matter. And that would also be my argument, Luds, if someone asked me about Logan Stankoven, I'd say, well, look what he's done all year throughout in his game too. It's not just so.
And I would also say I wish there was an anonymous way to ask the coaches in the league, here's your top 3 or your top 2. Which guy would you rather have on your team? And let them take that into account. It'll never happen. But I can tell you there's going to be a lot of guys that would write like a player that plays at both ends and plays at that pace that, Logan does versus maybe a one-dimensional guy.
The one good thing that has happened with the voting on this and where it's gone is it has been, I think it's been 4 or 5 years now that all the ballots are made public. And so that if you have a bad ballot, it will be out there and you will be found by the rest of the world. And I think that has been a good step. It's
other called thing accountability for voters, and that's important.
And I thought it was called chastise them.